All right, if you have comments or questions, we call this the Afterburn. You can come up to the microphone right over here, or if you're on live stream, you can start typing them in. All right, so the Afterburn, this is where we kind of get a sense of how well you received or understood what I said. So the comments that we're asking you to make, especially for the live streamers, and the questions to ask are, at least for right now, because it looks like we only have about a half an hour, about this teaching. So let's keep it to one question, try to make it quick. All right, Deirdre.
Shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom.
I just want to thank you and Elder Billy for talking about the trials and doing the right thing. Failed a test this week, struggles and everything. And on top of that, now I got to study for a test. Oh my gosh. So
No. Listen, these are not tests like you think, because these are all pop quizzes. You don't get warned about them.
No,
it's not like, by the way, you're having a test on Tuesday. Well, it'd be nice to know in advance. But they're all pop quizzes.
I was talking about the citizenship thing.
Oh, the citizenship test.
Now I have to study for something on top of everything else?
That one's a test. I gave you a warning, yes. Well, no, you don't have to study for it. These are things you should know.
I know. Now I have to study. Let's just call a spade a spade.
And I didn't give you everything on there. There are essay questions. There are all kinds of things. All right.
That's just me coping.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful. So my question is Deuteronomy 23:14, talking about making the camp set apart. And you mentioned if your home is the camp, you need to set it apart. How do you make your house set apart? Is it just your behavior? Is it how you're working with the kids, with your spouse? Or is it just your influence?
Okay, well, it's all of that. I mean, it's going to be your behavior in the house. But remember, this is specifically talking about, in a gross way, excrement. And so, in other words, stuff that you would leave or be seen or be around the house that doesn't belong in the house. In other words, that's not where it belongs, right? And it smells and it's ugly and it's going to cause problem. It's toxic and all that kind of stuff. So, you don't want things in your house that don't belong in your house. Now, bear in mind, I understand that when you start to get to the point where you have older teenagers or even other adults living in your house, they're like guests, and so it's a little tougher to do. But there is no reason where you can't have, especially if they're 18 or older, and say, look, this is not going to be in my house. Oh, but. It's my house. You have a problem, there's a door. You're welcome to walk through it and go do whatever you want in your house. And so, you can't control certain things, but you can choose to allow or not allow. Like we had several conversations with couples around the world which have had this challenge where they've had family members come over or friends come over to stay for a little while, and they want to bring pork into the house or shrimp into the house or something into the house. I said, it's your house. Oh, but there's no but. Just tell them this can't be in my house. Look, when I go to my mother's house, she almost always has something unclean in her refrigerator, but it's her house, okay? Now, she's actually pretty good now that she knows what we do to point out to my children when they were little, oh, you can't eat that. It has something in it they can't have. So, because they wouldn't know something had something at that young age, years and years ago. But in my house, I have an 18-year-old lives in my house now, and I told him certain things that just don't happen in my house. Okay, as long as he wants to stay there, those are my rules. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Mr. Waffle, Shamish Waffle.
All right, that's fine. Thank you. I just had something I wanted to make a comment, I guess, because it talked about being set apart. And this is a thought I had, I guess. The problem we have is a daily one, because in becoming set apart, we see the gratification in doing so to be delayed in receiving that gratification. And in our selfish desires, it comes with immediate gratifications. So the struggle is making the choice to be set apart by setting apart the desires that we have daily, So that's my thought.
I think some of us followed that. No, that was good. That was very well said. That was good. All right, Chris.
Okay, so in 1 Peter 1, verse 2, it says, set apart by the Spirit unto obedience and sprinkling of the blood of Yeshua.
Yep.
And so I thought that was interesting that you're set apart. You talked a lot about obedience as being what sets you apart. And then the sprinkling of the blood, I connected that to Exodus 29. In verse 1 of 29, it talks about setting apart the priests, and how in verse 20 and 21, it talks about how they slay the ram, take the blood, and they put it on the right ear and the thumb and the toe, and that sprinkling the blood. And then later on it talks about on the garments too. And so we're supposed to be set apart in our in what we hear, and what we do, and how we walk, and what we wear. Yes, correct. And those are all things I've taught before, so good for remembering and piecing that all together. Excellent. Excellent. Mercy.
Hi. So I have a general set-apart question. Hopefully that this will fit in here. So talking about set apart, how does that work with, let's say, the fear of Yahweh? So I know that us being set apart, we're not supposed to respond in certain ways. But I know for me personally, if there's a situation that's happening, if I feel like I'm too, and I had this conversation with Kathy, if I feel like I'm too shalom, then I feel like there's something wrong, like I'm missing something. And I feel like there has to be some type of angst somewhere around for him to say that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not being arrogant about it. I'm having shalom, but I don't want too much shalom. So how does that work with being set apart? Like, how are we really supposed to act in terms of like the fear and being set apart and so on and so forth?
All right, so that shalom, it's just the calm before the storm. No, I'm kidding. He's giving you a chance to catch your breath before he pops you one. No. You got to understand my relationship with Mercy, okay? Look, enjoy those moments. Don't get prideful about them, like I must be doing everything great. I mean, just look, he's not going to be relentlessly just torrentially downpouring on you with trials and tribulations and stuff, but there's going to be that eye of the storm where it's calm and everything's good, and then the storm kicks up again and knocks some things around, and then there's that calm again. So it comes in waves and cycles, and sometimes things can be pretty good for a little while. Sometimes it's only good for a few minutes, and enjoy those things, but be aware that you don't want to end up in the place where you're thinking, well, look, I've arrived, everything's great. So it's a legitimate concern, but unless you're really feeling that way, it's nothing to worry about, okay?
Sorry. But what if you're in the midst of the storm? I mean, not even the eye. You haven't even seen the eye yet. And you're still in the tumultuous part of the storm, but you have shalom, but then you feel like that shalom is like, oh, you shouldn't be feeling this much shalom.
No,
you're in the middle of it.
No, in other words, you actually have arrived on some levels. In other words, you're finding a way to have shalom in a trial. And so you should feel like, wow, this is what he wanted me to have, and I've got it. Great, this is good. I'm able to enjoy this. You know, not like, look at how good I am because this isn't something good. You're in the trial, but being able to say, I actually have gotten this as a new part of my talent set, my skill set. I mean, I've developed the ability to have shalom in a storm. And so that should make you feel good. Okay, there's no pride or ego for that because it's not like you did anything except feel appropriately because of your fear of Yahweh and your trust and your emunah, so that way you didn't lose your stuff when you were losing your stuff, okay? When everything around you was going kind of crazy. So that's really good. So just feel good when those moments happen. All right, that's our goal. All of us should be able to have, peace, and then you should be able to have it from then on, if possible. Every time a storm comes up, trust him, do all the things, and if you do, you should have a sense of peace while it's all kind of chaotic at that moment. All right. Yes, sir, Mr. Pete.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm really enjoying this teaching, much better than that evil teaching.
You lie. You love that evil teacher. You came to me and told me you did.
Okay. That's not what I told you. I want to get back to, there's something you said right at the outset. You said that which is set apart is used as a measuring stick.
Yes.
And what that made me think about, in order to be set apart and to set ourselves apart, that means we have to make sacrifices. We don't engage in the behavior we might have enjoyed before. We don't do that anymore. And so I thought about the sacrifices that are talked about in the in the Torah that usually, when we think of sacrifices, we think about animals and grain and stuff like that, but that's not what is intended. I think sacrifice means something because it's the quality, it's the measurement of that sacrifice, because Cain's sacrifice wasn't worthy. And that is what caused him a problem, the fact that his sacrifice wasn't worthy. So are our sacrifices worthy? Are we making worthy sacrifices? And then that made me think about tithing. Tithing is set apart money. And if we are not making that sacrifice, we're not living up to what he expects us to do. So it's not only what we do that matters, but it's what we don't do that matters as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why the commandments, are there to give you the do's and the don'ts. And then if you don't do the do's and you do the don'ts, so not doing a do is just as bad as doing a don't. That's going to end up in focus or something. I know that. It'll be a little short. I mean, if you do something he says not to do, there's no difference in how bad that is in his sight than not doing something he said to do. Okay? Both are failures of obedience. He wants you to do it, you didn't do it. He also wanted you not to do something and you did it. There's no one's better than the other. They're both bad and wrong or whatever on the same level. Okay. Michael.
I had to type this one up because I am way better at one-on-one communication than I am, getting up here and saying stuff like this. By the way, she fell asleep during the teaching, so you're good at putting her to sleep. Anywho.
Good. Hi, Adar. I said that. She's like looking around. I said hi. Go ahead.
When we were in 1 Peter, we got to verse 19. My mind just went off the rails. I went everywhere. But so what I came up with was this: the fathers of our people covered the lintel and the doorposts in the blood of a lamb. They had to then pass through the blood of the lamb in order to be offered the covenant, instructed, and set free west of the Jordan. In modern times, we may come to understand what it means to be covenanted and receive instruction in the covenant prior to accepting it, then passing through the blood of the lamb, the metaphorical lamb. The Torah is the road on which I am to walk. The fruits of the Spirit must be full and large within me. I must approach the blood-covered door, walking upon the instructions of the Torah, bearing, that is, carrying in order to present as an offering the 9 fruits of the Spirit. I must not give smaller, underripe, or rotting fruits. I must not make the offering of Cain off the path with inadequate fruit. Otherwise, the reward that Cain received, I will also receive. But in the end of days, when it cannot be undone. This is the only way out of the second Mitzrayim, the Mitzrayim that I cannot be taken out of. But it's a 2-part deal, Torah and fruit, because you can keep the Torah but not have the fruits. Likewise, you can have all of the fruits but keep nothing. Both are needed.
Amen. Amen. Well said. And for those of you that don't use like a translation that guy saw when he said Cain, he was talking about Cain. Okay, but just the Hebrew would be Cain. Okay. Live stream.
Okay, from MSK says, my daughter and I are practicing the set apart. Says my daughter is 12 years old and sometimes has to go to her father's house for a timeshare, and she can't follow Torah while with her dad. Is this going to be okay?
Okay, so the answer is relatively simple, but the thing is, I want to address what the real problem is. Okay, the problem is not whether it's going to be okay. The problem is why you don't think it's okay, and that's because you think that you have authority where you don't have authority. If she's at her father's house, you have nothing to say unless you have a legal document that says you do. And so that would make it okay. Not okay like you are wanting it to be whatever it is. You have, and this is where I want all of you to listen. You need to recognize the limit of your authority. I'll say it again. You need to recognize that there is a limit to what you actually can control and have authority over. Not that there's no limit to what you can try to control and drive everybody around you a little crazy while you try to control things you shouldn't. but recognizing that you can't control certain things. You cannot control I've got people calling me up about their 30-something-year-old children doing whatever they're doing. They're adults, they're off on their own, they don't even live in your house. You can't control it, let it go. But we have this where everything's about us. Look, it's a selfish thing, okay? You say, no, it's because I care about my daughter. That has nothing to do with your daughter. Your daughter's going to experience everything there is experienced in this world that she's supposed to, and one day he's going to pop her bubble and she's going to have to make her own choices. And she's going to experience whatever teachings of religion her father's going to teach her. Whether he teaches her or somebody else teaches her. She'll have friends, other people, she'll learn it. And she'll decide if it's for her or not. But you got to recognize that you have no authority there. Unless legally you were given authority over her spiritual upbringing, then you could bring it to court and say, listen, I told you you can't do this with her or whatever. But if you don't have any of that, then you don't have any of that. But I think that's, when I say it's selfish, and by the way, a lot of you get all mad if I use the word selfish because you think, you have no idea, I'm so generous, I give my daughter everything, give my son everything, I give people everything. I'm not talking about that kind of selfishness where you want everything for you. It's a selfishness where it's all about you, about how you feel about it. I don't like it, I don't want it, it's not right. That becomes a very selfish position because then you start acting inappropriately and jumping into places you don't belong because you don't like and you don't want, etc. Does that make any sense to anybody? You recognize yourself in any of that? That's a selfish behavior because it's about how you feel. Well, I don't want her doing that. I understand that. If you can just feel that and let that go, that's fine. It becomes selfish when you feel like you need to do something that you can't or shouldn't. And you insert yourself someplace because of your feelings and your preferences and your desires and the way you see the world. That's where it becomes selfish. Oh, but I just want to keep her safe. Yes, you do, but you have no authority there. And so when you ask me if it's all right, absolutely it's all right. Abba's allowed her to be in a place where there's two parents and they do things differently, and he will work with her where, look, you know what? Whoever asked that question, okay, Miss Kay, I bet you didn't get raised in this. I bet you were exposed to different things. I bet you maybe went through 5, 6 different churches like a lot of people do. How many of you went to at least 4 or 5 different churches? At least, okay? Almost every hand went up. So somehow you still ended up here. So I wouldn't worry about what your daughter's learning from him religious-wise and spiritually. She's only 12. She'll get time to figure it out. And don't think that, that 12, because a lot of you just don't want to accept, some of you have this problem with your children in the congregation. And you think, well, they're in the congregation, they must be bubble popped. Probably none of them are. And you're thinking, don't say that about my kid. No, just go talk to your kid, okay? They're not bubble popped. Yeah, they might enjoy being here, they got friends here and everything else, and they're listening, and they're hearing stuff, but they are not old enough to choose this for themselves. And they probably haven't had any experience to compare this to anything necessarily, unless you took them out recently out of wherever, something else they were in, where they were going to Sunday school and other things. So let them become adults and see what Yahweh does with them, okay? You keep doing what you're doing as the teaching through your life, be set apart, through your behavior, show them what it looks like. Set that example so that when their bubble is popped, they'll know exactly who to come to get questions answered. They'll go, wait a minute, I remember mom was doing things differently than dad here. And what dad's doing, I'm thinking is not right now. I need to go ask her about this Christmas thing, this Easter thing, the Sabbath thing, whatever it is that she's going to try to get. When the bubble pops, it's usually either Christmas or Sabbath. One of those two things usually is where people start. They recognize that the pagan holidays, or they recognize that the Sabbath is on the wrong day. Is that with most of you? Okay, almost everybody. Okay, so that's where it begins. And it'll begin with that for her too, if that's where it needs to be. It'd be easier too if you've taught her some of this stuff, because she's already going to know. She's already going to know, but now she's comparing two systems. So make sure she sees that yours is better because you're better. You're more set apart, you're more loving, you're more patient, you're more fruit of the Spirit. Okay? All right. Next question.
From Chris Zimmer, from Rena, it says, because we are created with Yah given passions and desires, where is the point it becomes a lust?
Okay. I defined it during the teaching. I'll redefine it here. I'll probably say the exact same thing. It becomes a lust when it's a craving, all right, that you shouldn't, for something you shouldn't have. Or for something you shouldn't have more of, you have enough, or that kind of thing. That's when it becomes a lust. When you have a desire, a passion for something that is not what he wants you to have, okay? So that's like when people lust for food, or let's say you have a lust for chocolate. So you eat a piece of chocolate. Well, that's not really a lust. You eat 2 chocolate bars on a regular, like daily, that might be a lust problem. You're like 2 whole, not just a small piece or something. See, this is what we have to wonder when you start overindulging, that may be a lust. If you start desiring something that you don't have, but you want it bad and it's driving you crazy and you're driving everybody else crazy, that might be a lust problem. Okay? It's not a lust problem when you want something you don't have and it's good for you and you haven't figured out how to have it and you're obsessing on it. That's not a lust problem. It's something that's good for you. You want it. You don't know how to get it yet. You're bothering people about it. You're looking for answers. That's what you did when your bubble got popped. So it has to do with, is what you want appropriate? Okay? Because to get successful in life, you have to have a lot of passion and drive and want it bad. But you have to want something that's appropriate. So again, there's no problem having a very strong passion for something. Matter of fact, you need that to be successful. That's whether it's appropriate or not. Okay, next question. And by the way, I love that Raina's asking questions. Raina's one of the children in the house. I like that she's asking questions. So.
Okay, I guess a follow-up, that note that I took here, when you in 1 Peter 1:14, when you're talking about the lust and your definition, or what you were saying was that desire, and then when we went back over to Exodus and you talked about coveting, what's the difference between coveting or the lust?
All right, so coveting is something that's not yours. Okay, you're coveting something that somebody else has that you want that's not yours, and that's where you have what they would call the evil eye, so to speak. The jealousy, the envy. Somebody has a bigger house, a nicer car. Maybe they just have a car and you don't have a car. Maybe they have, something, whatever they have and you want it, and they have it and you don't have it, and it now causes you to have a bitterness, a jealousy. These are the things where the coveting comes in. Whereas you desire but don't have, like Paul talks about in one of the verses we read during the evil teaching, which is where a lot of the suffering comes from, right? You desire but you don't have. Well, desiring something that you shouldn't have is where the lust comes in. You could want a car, and I have one. And then you could then have coveting for the fact that I have a car. Now you're jealous, you're envious. Why does he have a car? I don't think why he should have one. Now I'm not putting any more money in his box, blah, 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 Or it could just be, people in the, I'm saying just, it's not that you shouldn't have a car. You're not wanting something you should have, so that's not coveting. I mean, I'm sure it's not, it's not a lust problem because you're coveting, you want something that's appropriate to have, but you don't have it, and it's not yours, and you want what they have, and you're jealous, and now you're bitter about the fact that they have and don't think they should have, and see the whole problem that spirals like that? So did that answer it, Rob? Because it was your question, so.
Yes, sir, it did.
Okay.
It makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Okay, from Stephanie Henderson, a question about Exodus 30, verse 13. Rabbi, could you please clarify for my brain to understand what is meant by measuring ourselves according to the shekel of the set-apart place?
Okay, again, I'm saying that the point I was making, and hopefully, it says, please clarify for my brain. Forget that it's a shekel, okay? I'm simply saying that things are measured by the set-apart standard of that thing. So when they were looking for shekels, there is one that was put in the set-apart place to measure that the thing actually weighs right, is made of the right, and that it actually is a shekel. Okay? Because that's why when you get a silver or gold coin, it will tell you on it 1 troy ounce, 0.99, whatever it is, pure, whatever it is. So that you know that that's according to the troy ounce standards. You know exactly what it is, how much it weighs, etc. And so when people made a shekel, now remember, they didn't have the machinery we have today where every coin is made and weighs exactly the same. So they wanted to make sure that your silver shekel actually had that much silver in it, that it weighed the same, it was the same as the one in the set-apart place. So by that same measure then, you are supposed to be measured against the set-apart standard for human beings. That's Yeshua. That's one of the reasons he came in the flesh. So we have a set-apart standard to be measured against. So hopefully that, I said that same thing I think during the teaching, but Stephanie, you may just have to go and listen to it again. All right, next.
Okay, Kevin Newkirk, is there a connection between 1 Corinthians 2:13 and 1 Peter 1:2? Is the set-apart spirit the same as set apart?
Well, no. The set-apart spirit is set-apart spirit. Just like we're supposed to be set-apart people or set-apart shekel. It's just that spirit is set apart for a purpose of serving Yahweh, etc. Okay? So there is a connection, but they're not the same. Okay, you being set apart doesn't make you the set-apart spirit. The set-apart spirit is the Ruach that is set apart. Okay? So when we say Holy Spirit, okay, the Ruach HaKodesh. So that's the spirit that is from above that is set apart to serve Yahweh's purposes. There are other spirits that are not Kadosh. They're not the Ruach HaKodesh. They're not Kodesh. All right, next.
Okay, from Janet Jacinto Hoffman. Rabbi, in Deuteronomy 23:14, when you said we are supposed to keep the camp set apart, is this also so that we do not become stumbling blocks to our brethren?
Absolutely. And look at Janet getting in a question even from Peru. So. Okay, absolutely. Next.
From Angelique Ewan, says, is our set-apart behavior the way to be a light to others? Is it the way we minister to others?
If your job is to minister to others. Otherwise, it's just everything you do. You do it the way Yahweh said. And if you do, you should be discernibly different than the people around you. So it's not just about how you minister to people. It's how do you work at the job? How do you drive in the traffic? You should be discernibly different in everything you do. How do you act in the store? How do you act in a restaurant? How do you act when you're interacting with a vendor? How do you work with your employees if you're an employer, or your employer if you're an employee? You should be discernibly different. And in a good way, not a bad way, right? In a Torah way. All right, any more? Because we're almost to 5:30. We're going to squeeze this in?
Yeah, last one. Greg Wallen says, Rabbi, you said about the world, quote unquote, it doesn't have the set apart understanding. Does this cause futile behavior or vice versa? Can a person / amoeba have set apart understanding and have futile behavior?
Okay, the answer is yes. Because just because you have understanding doesn't mean that you're yet applying it. Remember the stages to this. First you get information. Then you have to receive the information. You have to understand the information you received. So, okay, how many of you have some area of your life, you know what to do, you know how to do it, you know exactly where and when and what and everything else, and they're still not doing it? Why is that? Do you understand the stuff? Yes. Because it takes the power of will and discipline to take the action in an area that you haven't been, or a different action we've been taking. Now you're changing directions in that area, right? So when it comes out to the idea of, can a person, have a set-apart understanding and still have feudal behavior? Absolutely, because just because you understand doesn't mean you're ready yet, have the will and the discipline to actually put it into action. I've got people still working Saturday who tell me they understand it's wrong, they understand it's not to be on Shabbat, but they happen to have this job that worked that way, and they're telling me this a year later, 2 years later. They have the understanding, but are they able to take the action? So yes, there is an idea of futile behavior. Okay, they're thinking they're still working on Saturday while saying that they understand better, but Yahweh will understand because I have to pay my bills and blah, blah, blah. No, you can get a different job. I don't know why everybody is so in love with their jobs. Like, before the Saturday thing came up, you probably wished you would get fired so you can get a different job. I mean, most people don't love their jobs. Some people do, but most people don't. But a lot of people, you know what? Because of their choice to walk Torah, had to make some interesting choices about their careers. People who are really talented athletes that realized, I'm never going to be able to play the sport because the sport always plays on Saturday is one of the days they play. Look, unless you're Sandy Koufax, it's not going to work for you. Sandy Koufax was so good, and he only, as a pitcher, only pitched once or twice a week. So Sandy Koufax was able to say to the team, I'm not pitching on Shabbat. And he didn't. But that's because he was the best pitcher in his era. And he wasn't an everyday player. If he was an everyday player, they may not have done that for him. They figured they could work around his schedule because he was that good. So unless you're that good and in that demand and can name your price, so to speak, you're going to maybe not be able to do what you really want to do in life or what you love doing because it's a Saturday thing. You dreamed of blah, blah, blah. But now, look, we have a young lady I did her wedding. She used to be on the live streams as a single. Now she's there as a married person who was slotted to be on the Canadian Olympic cross-country ski team. And she gave it up because she realized they were doing, this is when she was a teenager still. She made her own choice, not to continue because they were requiring Saturday meets and Saturday competitions. I was so proud of her. And so, but I know that was heartbreaking. She loved the sport. She was good at it. She could have possibly made the team. She certainly was slotted to make the national, have a chance to make the national team, and she was doing well in her province, etc. There are things that in this world you may not be able to experience, do, or enjoy just because it's this world and the way this world does it. And that may seem unfair and may be painful emotionally, but it's your reality. And if I can get you guys to do anything before I drop, is to get you to start fully living. Not start living, but fully living. Because a lot of you live in reality. You just don't fully live in reality. You don't want to accept the realities of this world and your walk in it. So you yell and you scream and you whine and complain, much more whining and complaining than anything, about how this sucks. Well, it does. Maybe you don't like me using that word. I'm sorry. But it does. But you have to embrace the reality, like the reality of your 12-year-old having to go stay with her father instead of with you, and then she may learn something else. By the way, that's a very common reality. I've got a lot of divorced people that I deal with young children where one's teaching them Torah, the other one's teaching them aggressively the opposite once they found out you were teaching them Torah. Okay? And there's not a thing you can do when they're over there. Just do what you can when they're with you. That's all you can do. But that's the idea of being able to live in reality, within the framework of what is and is not possible, allowable, even your thing to be dealing with because it's actually your authority to do, within the scope of your authority. Please, let's start living in reality and stop overstepping bounds that you should not overstep into somebody else's area. That's what, I promise you, you get it. Can you not look back on anything you've been doing over the last however many years and realize every time you did that, it went bad? Okay, ultimately, it went bad. You suffered, the other person suffered, some combination of the two. It doesn't ever bear good fruit because you're stepping into something you shouldn't be stepping in. Oh, but I'm trying to save them. But did it actually do any good? No. I know. I watch you guys do it all the time. It never works because it can't. It's not your area. So let's hopefully get that to work out. I really want you guys embracing fully that in this reality, what Yeshua was talking about in John 17, that you would not be of the world, but set apart in it. Okay? You live here. You're not going to be taken out of it until he shows up. Okay? And he's not taking you out before the tribulation, blah, 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 blah. He's showing up to call you to the last battle and change you so you're ready to fight when he lands on the mount. And the armies of the world are gathered against Jerusalem. Zechariah 14. Right? So let's keep that in mind as we're kind of getting this all together. Okay, that's our reality. All right. Thank you all for the questions and the comments.